sorry, market average is 3.9. You can head back to your office and revise that paperwork for me, and we'll talk again when you're north of 5%.
I mean, I think the labor market is such right now. Workers have so much leverage. You just say, nah, just send me the spreadsheet. I'll add the numbers. Like,
This podcast contains the arguably witty banter of two friends, Skippy and Doogles, that like to debate about investing. The content is intended to be entertaining and for informational purposes only, not investment advice. You should do your own research and consult a financial professional before using any of the information in this podcast, and especially before investing.
less than 20 trading days left, my friend.
For me to not make a trade. I'm so excited.
Oh, my goodness. So many opportunities to not make trades.
Yeah, and then I'm not going to make any trades until I think my next rebalance is middle of the year. So,
ugh, nasty. I'm
are you?
I'm not gonna buy anything, but there's a bunch of stuff gonna get sold over the next couple weeks for me.
It's fun.
Yeah,
make your life easier.
Yeah, exactly. It does. But 2022, I am excited about. Woo-hoo!
Why's that?
So this excitement might go away, but I just want to see. I want to see whether or not there's a short coming in my future. I'm excited about that. I also, independent of that, I'm always excited to see what the new year is going to bring from a purchase perspective. Like, I get to learn about some new companies potentially. It's an exciting time. I like it. So
yeah, for those who don't know about Doogles' model, just disregard that nonsense he said about shorting. That's bad advice for everyone, including Doogles, but I won't bore you with it right now. How was your week?
I had a good week. Nice week. And coming into the holidays, it all feels good. You?
Yeah, I think I'm ready to make a recommitment to exercise. Maybe I'll buy a Peloton bike or something.
I don't know, man. A little birdie, friend of a friend, who used to watch Sex and the City back in the day. This friend, out of control friend.
Like not you, right? No,
friend, a friend of a friend of a friend of a friend.
Okay.
Maybe watched the old show a couple times fully through. Maybe they did.
Yeah, just had the DVDs and yeah.
Yeah, so what they told me was there's a reboot this week. I don't know anything about it, but they told me there's a reboot this week called And Just Like That. And on this episode, spoiler alert for those, pause it right now. I think the Venn diagram
for those who have a friend of a friend, right?
Yeah, the Venn diagram between people who watch this and those that listen to our podcast are probably, it's not a huge overlap, but just in case, spoiler alert. So on this episode, one of the main characters rides Peloton 45-minute class with, and for the record, so there's an instructor on Peloton, Jess King is her name. Yeah. And this is the person I'm like, when I want to get killed, I take a Jess King class. I literally, that's what I say. So he takes this 45-minute Jess King class, gets off, boom, keel's over. Very sad, major character, very sad. It says my friend.
Heart attack, something?
Heart attack. Yeah, heart attack.
Okay.
My friend told me he had cardiac issues in the past in prior episodes. I don't know anything about it, but my friend told me this. But anyway, so then Peloton stock gets creamed on Friday. Related, unrelated. Who knows?
Well, you're making my morning because I saw some buzz on one of the socials that was like Peloton stock down, et cetera, alluding to Sex in the City, but there was no details. The article was behind a paywall or something. And so I'm not lucky enough to have a friend of a friend, or maybe I haven't had a chance to catch up, this time around. And I couldn't figure out what was going on. So now that I know the secret, I'm really excited about the news.
You're in the loop. And you can say, is it related? Is it unrelated? You never know with markets. But regardless, Peloton comes out with a statement about the episode. So I think this says more about Peloton than anything else in the state of their stock's down like 70% this year. But they had to come out to be like, yeah. The spokesperson said something along the lines of, I bet you that Mr. Big, the character, riding this Peloton actually extended his life. He probably would have had.
No.
Yes, I'm telling you. Anyway. Thank you for that listener mail from my friend about that episode.
Yeah. We appreciate the listener mail on that. Speaking of losses, the Financial Times did awesome charts on Cathie Wood's holdings this week. Some of the stuff that she's held down. We talked about Cathie way too much, and so I won't bore you with this, but One of her holdings is called Proton Labs, and it's down almost 80%. And if I read this right, if I understood this right, I just thought this was an interesting like factoid. That's a really small company, and what happened when her fund had net inflows is there was like crazy demand to keep up their position in that company as the inflows came into her fund. And now that she's experienced significantly outflows, like she's in a way somewhat responsible for collapsing stock prices for these smaller companies because she made up such a large portion of their holdings. I just thought that was like a interesting note from the week that I had thought about before, but I hadn't thought about deeply, at least recently. So it's crazy the push and pull of kind of we say the hyenas in the market, right? But
Yeah.
when that was the hot thing, it totally changed the fortunes of one company for a short time, probably positively, and now it's probably overdoing the negative prospects of that company simply because of the Cathie Wood effect.
It makes me think about, it was a few weeks back, we talked about the research paper that came out that was saying, do inflows and outflows influence market prices? Yeah, that's interesting, especially with one specific market manager.
Yeah, it's really fascinating stuff. Just stuff you don't think about, or I don't think
Yeah.
about on a daily basis. All right, so I want to talk about a great podcast we got to this week with Philip Rosedale and Bill Gurley. Bill Gurley is definitely one of the favorites on the show, and this is the Patrick O'Shaughnessy pod. So some really quality content comes out of there. I know I've mentioned it in the past. This was basically about Philip and Bill's adventure with Second Life. And Doogles, I know you're very familiar, so I'll let you jump in shortly. But Philip founded Second Life. Doogles, I'll lean on you for the facts. I want to say 20 years ago. Really got hot in 99-ish. Is that right?
I was after that. So it was founded, if I remember correctly, it was founded in 2003. And the 2006 to like 2008, 2009 era was really when it was hot, the hotness.
Thank you. So yeah, the 99 reference I made, actually, as I remember it, that's when Philip felt like the computing power was getting to the point where it could take this idea he had and turn it into something. And I think his idea was largely about, he loved Legos growing up, and he thought it'd be really cool if a bunch of people in real time could collaborate on like Lego sets that all link together, right? Super cool idea. And really cutting edge, I think, in the early 2000s. And there's a reason that this got popular. A few factoids that I'll throw out that I just thought was super interesting. For those who don't know, Second Life is like the first iteration of what people are calling the metaverse today. And it's also probably an early iteration of like the Minecrafts that are incredibly popular right now. I think Minecraft is the first or second most popular video game in the world. The Roblox, which is a public company that has all sorts of buzz and has some really cool features. Second Life did this first. And so Patrick's view was, I'm going to talk to Philip and Bill about their adventures 15 years ago and see what's applicable to Zuckerberg's vision of the metaverse today. I just think it's a fascinating concept. If you're hearing that buzzword out, I'd encourage you to dig into this because there were so many great learnings. So let me pause before I go down several more rabbit holes, Doogles, and let you jump in on the Second Life experience.
Sure thing. And I left Linden Lab, which is the company that makes Second Life. I left there about a decade ago. So anything that's happened there over the past 10 years, I don't know anything about. But the technology behind this is incredible. I don't think I'll experience technology again in my career that was comparable to what was created there. To give you a sense early on, so Philip was at a company called Real Networks before he came to Second Life, and Real Networks was it was a media player online, and so that's where when you bring up like seeing bandwidth being capable, computing power being capable of doing this, like he was in the heart of what bandwidth computer power looked like. But anyway, early on in Second Life, they created this thing called the rig. So this is before my time. At the very beginning, created this thing called the rig, which was a chair that you'd sit on, and it would measure, like you'd get all hooked up, and it would measure like your movement, your body movement, so you can move your avatar like through this chair, right?
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it's phenomenal. Then drop that, end up going to a mouse and a keyboard, right? But because it's much more practical. But anyway, it was just showing you how far ahead the thought process and the like technological push was at this organization. But quite incredible, and happy to talk a little bit more as you start to get into the podcast. I'd love to hear what was interesting to you, and then I can feed in any experience I had there if applicable.
Yeah, well, so much, and I'm glad we have a expert with some experience at this actual company that we can lean on today in Doogles. But just really fascinating stuff. So they talked about total addressable market a little bit, right? He said initially they were kind of excited with, I'll probably articulate this the wrong way, but like the graphics, and they wanted it to be somewhat lifelike and stuff. And then when they compare and contrast to like the Minecrafts and the Roblox today that have taken off in a way that maybe Second Life never got to that in terms of number of daily active users and sort of things, they both said one of the things that Minecraft did right is make the learning curve to get immersed in that world as simple as possible. And you see that with 5-year-olds and 7-year-olds jumping into Minecraft head over heels. I think Second Life, and I'd be interested for your take on this, initially was like, this is a more adult-like thing, and they just realized that the niche for adults that, one, either have the free time or have the interest or have the desire to escape to this other world is a small percentage of all adults. I mean, people are out raising kids and going to soccer games and balancing their work stuff, right? So that was a really interesting insight that they said if they did it all over again, they'd make it as simple as possible, and they'd probably start with kids as your core market and maybe grow from there.
Yeah, and we talked a little bit about this before on the pod around kids, because to give you some sense for when I was there, I did a lot of leading on strategy, like corporate strategy for them, a bunch of other stuff. But one of the things that I kept tracking was the growth of virtual worlds around kids. And so I'd send these emails to like Philip, our CFO at the time, right? And then we had a CEO at one point, Mark Kingdon, great guy, and say like, we got to do this thing, right? And we actually had there were two separate Second Lives. There was the adult Second Life, and then there was a kids one, but the kids one was effectively neglected. Okay. We didn't do as much there. It was like a tiny part of things. And I was saying like, this feels like it's a real thing. And then one day, Philip was like, he called me in, and I'd made this deck that I'd put in a drawer. I used to make decks and put them in drawers. It was like a thing I did early in my career. Do that if you want, young kids. Anyway, so I pulled out this deck and like showed what could the growth of kids be like. And Philip was like, go do this. And so we had this project that was like about 6 or 7 months long, where we looked into how can we have kids be in the same world as the adults, because them being separate, it wouldn't work. And so I was like, how do we redo our marketplace? And so we did this whole thing, and kids grew from like 1% to 20% of our audience nearly overnight. Like it became a pretty big thing, but it wasn't built for kids. I think to the point of what he brought this up in the pod is that we didn't have the simplicity, right? That like kids could really get into. So we ended up making it was 16 plus. So it wasn't like kids, it was 16 plus that we ended up making it. But I fully, as he was talking there, he and Bill were talking about that. It like took me back like fully into those moments when we were discussing, but trip down memory lane.
No, it's so fun. I really enjoyed this one because, I mean, I think Bill Gurley is like the most rational venture capitalist that I'm aware of. I'm always taken by like his expertise, but his groundedness, and you know, he just comes across as trustworthy to me, and that's not always the case with those types of folks. I really enjoyed this, but to me, the overarching thing, without going down too many rabbit holes, was kind of like they are directly saying that Zuckerberg's vision for the metaverse is misguided. I don't know. What's the right word, Doogles? Like, they don't appear to be excited about his ideas for how the metaverse will work, about his thoughts of the total addressable market, about his ideas about profitability. Like, to me, the two most knowledgeable people in the world on the subject, basically, I mean, they'd be in that a handful of 10 most knowledgeable people on the metaverse, are going, no, Zuckerberg's approach doesn't make any sense. And that's how I felt from the start. Like, that's the worst part of the Facebook investment right now from an equity perspective is the fact that they want to spend however many billions on the metaverse. And I just think it's a dead end. Anyway, what what were your takes on that compare and contrast of their learnings to Zuckerberg's approach, and maybe not just Zuckerberg? There's a lot of people talking about the metaverse right now.
Yeah, but in general, yeah. So going back to your point around Bill Gurley, rational, he is, and also pushes the envelope, like rational and pushes the envelope. Philip is not rational, like, which I think makes like a really interesting pairing. And what I mean by that is, like, back in early 2000s, he's thinking about rigging people to chairs, right? Like it's like he's living in a whole different universe. So it's an interesting like pairing as far as the podcast goes. To your point,
I mean, it's a creator mindset. It's awesome.
Exactly.
Like, you need those type of people. Yeah,
exactly. Part of what they brought up in the pod, and it's true, is that like they did this, right? Like the what, when I say did this, I mean what Zuckerberg's talking about around, I think exactly what one of Bill Gurley, I'll get the quote a little bit wrong, but in the spot he said, he's like, no one wants to have a board meeting in the metaverse. Like, we had board meetings in the metaverse, right? Yeah. And then there was a
the board members said, we're not going back to that. That was not a good experience for us. You know, like, been there, done that.
Exactly, because it's a useless use of the technology, basically, because you log in, you get in your avatar, and you go sit in a chair, and then it's just audio, right? Like that isn't then it just becomes a conference call. And so that's not the use for it. There are other elements that you can use for business and education, which Philip also talked about, around building out 3-dimensional representations of things in the real life, and you can experience them together. Like that's a use for it. But like if Mark Zuckerberg or at all like ends up going down the same path effectively that Second Life with the enterprise went down, then you're not using the learning that other folks have had. So if you just kind of go in there and you hang out with other people from your company, like that's not going to be it at all. But there's a there, but you got to get it right. And if people have already gone down that path, I hope Zuckerberg's trying to meet with Philip and Bill and Mitch Kapoor, who is the earliest investor there and on the board. Like, learn from the past, and there's stuff to do.
I just like, if you're at all fascinated, it's the best thing. I feel like I've consumed 5 different podcasts that somehow talk about the metaverse, and this was by far the most rational, most meaty. There's so many good learnings and appropriate facts in there. Like, Second Life is still around. I think user base is about what it was sometime in the late 2000s, Doogles, and there's still, I forget the numbers, but I think billions of dollars being exchanged in that marketplace. They talked about creating the marketplace, and that was just fascinating to me. I mean, they basically could have had crypto long before crypto. Now, it wouldn't have been decentralized on a blockchain, but they made a decision early on about if it was going to be pegged to the dollar, or if there was going to be a fixed amount of the fixed supply of the currency, which could have completely changed the outcome of that game, because people could have started buying Linden dollars. As the user base grew, they would have increased in values relative to the dollar, which could have brought more users to the space. There's just a lot of fascinating decisions that were made. I really enjoyed the pod, and so I'd recommend it for sure.
Definitely, if you're into the metaverse, listen to this podcast. And I'd also, if you're going to read anything about Second Life, to pull a thread that you just said, read about the economy. I think that is the most fascinating part about Second Life, is the economy, the Linden dollar as the quote unquote cryptocurrency. That's not what we called it there, but the digital currency. Yeah. The economy is so fascinating, and the exchange that we had. So like, if you can find old articles or anything about that, I would go and read about that. It's really fascinating. The original NFTs, really, baby.
Good. Yeah, really good stuff. I'll check that out. Gurley also mentioned, to shift gears slightly, but I've been hung up on this for a while. They were talking cryptocurrencies. They were talking about ETH and Solana. And he said, the fascinating thing about that space is if Solana ends up replacing ETH, then are we just in a race to the bottom? Because the reason Solana would replace ETH is because it has very similar functionality, and it's quicker and less expensive. And so he goes, if that actually holds true, does that mean the entire market is worth a small fraction of what we think it's worth? Because it's effectively saying that, to use your phrase, there's a there, but we're going to race to the bottom in terms of costs and functionality. And so the value tied with that is a fraction of what we thought it might be, when people are willing to spend all this additional money on security with like original ETH. I love Bill Gurley's thoughts. And I've been thinking about that all week.
Agreed. Fishbowl time.
Hit me up.
My favorite word, my word, Doogles' word of 2021, just to try and challenge Merriam-Webster, is fragility, as everyone knows. And I want to hit on a couple.
It's going to be my favorite word of 2022 because I think we're going to skate through this year without much fragility.
But no, the fragility's still there, bro. But anyway, but two pieces of evidence of that. One is I want to read an answer on Quora about fragility, and then I want to give some other example. So Quora is a question and answer website that I frequent. I enjoy it. Basically, someone puts out a question, and there are enough experts on the platform that you can get some pretty smart answers to questions that you have. So people ask things like, how do you actually go to space? And then you'll get like Neil deGrasse Tyson that'll like come on and like answer it.
Yeah.
So, and then you get people that ask questions like this. So question that was asked, why are people afraid of day trading? I have made 50 to 100% every month for the last 7 years. Okay, here's the answer. And this is like, it's just so beautiful. The answer's so beautiful. Here it is. Really? You made 50 to 100% monthly for 7 years? Let's say you made 50% every month for 7 years and started with $1,000. Let's also assume that you didn't withdraw money from the account. In 7 years, there's 84 months. Then there's a quick little math problem they do. Your initial investment would be worth $600 million billion, or more than the entire economy of the earth. For some reason, I don't believe you. The typing out of $600 million billion like made the entire thing for me. I love this.
There's a reason that there's more courses on day trading than day trading billionaires, because a lot of people will tell you that they make 50% a month for 7 years, but no one actually is the Buffett, Bezos, level rich. It's not going to work out for you. I love that too.
And I can, if you take the question literally, I could believe it. In every month for the last 7 years, this person has had a 50% return. That is not saying my portfolio returned in aggregate 50% to 100% every month. No, so anyway, yeah, I love it.
Yeah, they had one 50% gainer and several 100% losers.
Yeah, exactly. The other thing I'll throw out is DocuSign had an earnings report, and this to me is another fragility sign. So DocuSign on earnings per share beat by 25%. They beat expectations by 25%. Revenue, not quite as much. They beat it by about 3%, right? But anyway, green on both sides. DocuSign fell by 42% following this earnings report. And it's because of looking ahead, them giving guidance that wasn't quite there. Yeah. But that to me also shows fragility, right? Because it's so priced for perfection that you can't even be more than perfect, like to a certain extent. Nor can you have any negative feelings toward the future. But what I'd add onto this is, and we've talked about versions of this before, this 42% drop took DocuSign's stock price back to its summer of 2020 price. So like it's meaningless effectively to give folks, and I'm going to do a market aggregate because individual stocks, it's too hard. You can cherry pick examples, but just to give what like a real, you said last time, wait till these people experience like a 50% market drop. Because when the market drops, it goes back years, people. Like we're not talking like last February, right? We're talking years. So to give you some examples, when the S&P 500 fell in the 2008 to 2009, so at the trough in 2009, it went back to 2002. It's 2002 price. When it hit the bottom in 2003, it went back to 1997 price, right? 1975, when it hit the trough, it went back to 1970. Like you get the idea there. This is when you get hit for real, you go back years. It's not, you can't remember the last time this price was hit is what we're talking about.
Yep.
End scene. Yep.
Oh, you did so well. You stole my whole talk track there because I have picked up the lessons from Doogles, and so DocuSign was at 400 something, it went to 200 something in a day. Like you look at the chart, it looks like it fell off a cliff. It literally did. And then you zoom out the chart a little bit and go, hey, when was the last time it was at that price? And in most cases, it's less than 24 months. Like it's just it's bonkers out there. Absolute craziness.
Fragility. Word of 2021 for Doogles. Word of 2022.
All right.
Estimated for Skippy.
Yeah. I want to pull two things out of the fishbowl. First is for the listeners, and the second is for you, Doogles. So, according to the Wall Street Journal, we all know we're reaching year end, and raises and bonuses should be on their way. According to the Wall Street Journal, there is companies are setting aside an average of 3.9%. So this is just for the listeners. When your boss comes into your office and says, "Hey, we love you. You did so great. We're giving you 3.2%. You're a top performer." You just go, "No, sorry. Market average is 3.9. You can head back to your office and revise that paperwork for me, and we'll talk again when you're north of 5%. All right?"
I mean, I think the labor market is such right now. Workers have so much leverage. You just say, "No, just send me the spreadsheet. I'll add the numbers." Like, you want to give me a raise? I'll just add the numbers.
Let me do some editing on that.
Exactly.
Take the security protections off.
That 3.2
second
is
it's a nice try, but that's not going to work for me.
Exactly.
Do you want to see my stack of job offers over here? All right. Second is hopefully a fun quiz. This is the best-selling make and model of cars worldwide. And so I'm going to throw out some countries, and you're going to tell me what the best-selling car is in that country. You ready?
Make and model?
I mean,
right.
let's see what you got.
What's wrong with it?
Let's go China.
I mean, like, this is, it's probably a make no, it's probably a make I don't even know. I probably don't know the name of the make. I can't. Can you start softball?
VW Lavidia? This is new to me, but this is the most popular car in the most populous country. Like, I feel like I should know this. I won't quiz you with this one, but apparently in Japan, it's the Honda N-Box. Like, these really cool making models. I want to see. I want to know what
How am I supposed to get this quiz? But was that the name of Jim Cramer's dog that you just said was the most popular car in China?
No.
All right.
All right. So the U.S. Do you know the U.S.?
Toyota Camry.
That's what I thought. No, they say the Ford F-Series, and it must be a way they like count up the Toyota Camry is frequently called the best-selling car in America, but I think that car piece is the real.
So it's the whole series, the whole F series. Okay.
Well, so what's funny is for Canada they say F series, and for the US they say the F-150. So people like the trucks in the US.
They like their gas guzzling.
I feel like this quiz is falling on its face. I have a bunch more countries for you, but you're not really going to know any of them. So
it's true. I mean, that is an accurate assessment.
How about the United Kingdom?
I'm going to say something European that's probably not even in the UK. The Peugeot Navistar.
Peugeot. Ford Fiesta. And then last
Close.
one. Hopefully this is easy. How about Sweden?
The Volvo something or other.
S60.
Oh, that was going to be the something.
I have another quiz. Yeah, I have another quiz for you later that's probably going to be just as bad, but apologies for that one. What's the next thing you're fishing?
What have I told you in the past? I know about a very few number of things. Very, very few. Public market investing.
So true.
Startups. And actually what I forgot before is poker. Those are 3 things I know about. 3 things I know about. You asking me about cars.
A little bit about Second Life in the
startup.
Yeah. Okay, there we go. What's in your fishbowl?
All right. I'm going to bring up a good friend of ours from back in the day. My boy, Peter Lynch, ran the Magellan Fund for quite a while. I think from 77 to 90, something like that. Has a very impressive track record, 29+% per year. Very impressive, for especially running a fund that by the end was like $1 billion. Like, it's a lot of money. So Peter Lynch, over the past, I think maybe month, but very recently, donated $20 million in art to his alma mater. I think it's Boston College, either Boston University or Boston College. I think it's Boston College though. So donated $20 million. So he's been getting some press and whatnot. He's on a podcast talking about the art. And then what was asked to him during this podcast, so maybe he was thrown off a little bit, but was asked to him was, what do you think about the shift toward passive? So the boy's there to talk about art, right? But they threw this at him at the end in like the last 90 seconds. What do you think about the move to passive? And he, to use your Harry Potter phrase, he basically said it's a bunch of hogwash. And what he actually stated was, he said that he believes that if people move to passive, they're going to be missing the boat, that he thinks it's a big mistake, and that his boys at Fidelity are going to keep cranking out market-beating returns like they've done for the past 10, 20, and 30 years. So this is what he throws out. The rest of what he said like doesn't even really make headlines. It's just like this last 60 seconds or 90 seconds or so that he has on the pod. But basically people are coming out and they're saying like, Peter Lynch is against passive investing. He and Warren Buffett have been friends in the past, but now they're probably going to be enemies, right? It's like, because Warren Buffett believes people shouldn't invest in passive investing. So anyway, I wanted to bring that up because we've chatted briefly like about the passive active thing, and it's been, you know, obviously passive versus active has been like a thing for a while that people are talking about, but want to get your take on that.
Yeah, so I'll reset. We're bad at doing this, but most of our investors are fairly sophisticated. Some people might not even know the ins and outs of that. So basically, the debate that's been going on for years in the finance community is simply about, as people go to the core investment strategy tends to be matching the market, which means buy index funds where the funds are, or the company picks are basically pre-established and adjust usually by the market cap weighting of those funds. Versus picking individual stocks, right? And someone like Buffett, rightfully so, says the average investor should not mess around with picking individual stocks. It's a losing game. That's 100% true. I think what Lynch and others are rightfully pointing out is if that pendulum swings too far to one direction, it gets to the point where equity valuations get disconnected from the true fundamentals of the company simply because they sit in a passive index that is popular, right? So a company in the S&P, and this isn't exactly how it works, but you'll get the analogy, Doogles, right? Like the 500th company that ends up in all the S&P 500 funds, as opposed to the 501st company that misses that cutoff, probably have very similar fundamentals. But the inflows in all those passive funds could change the valuation, at least the market capitalization of that 500th company. I didn't hear this clip, but do you think my speculation of his thought process is right, or was there more nuance to it than that?
I think that is at least partially right. I think that's a significant part of it. I also think that one is, if you go back to what I said before, he beat the market over a 13-year period, 29+% a year. Like that's his lived experience, right? As one, he also knows, I'm going to state this as pure fact, is that if you invest in a passive fund, you will not beat the market. Like that is, it's guaranteed. And so I think that there's a part of it that you need to add some nuance on here, which I think you just did a fine job of doing, is saying that if you're an investor that wants to beat the market, then yes, you're definitely going to miss the boat if you don't do active. If you don't have a fund that is investing in individually picked stocks, you're gonna miss the boat. And the vast majority, like 95, 98, 99% of people should just invest in a passive fund, because most of the active funds do lose. So I think that there is some nuance there, but I think for the most part, he's whatever, like 90 years old at this point, and he's just like, he has his lived experience, and he's saying, I think that based on what I experienced back in the 80s, 90s, 2000s, whatever, that active managers can do pretty well, and people should think about that.
Well, he was great at it, still is. I mean, this almost ties to the direct indexing conversation, which right now, even for your person that knows nothing about the stock market, they might be like, you know what? I think passive is the way for me. I'm perfectly fine with the S&P 500, but man, Tesla's valuation is garbage, and so is I'll just throw out two large names, Apple and Microsoft. If someone invests in a so-called passive fund that excludes Microsoft, Apple, and Tesla, their returns are going to be drastically different. than those who do not. And I wonder, like, if I was just having a beer with Peter Lynch, what he'd think about that approach, because I think he's generally understands that passive works for the large majority of people and is probably the right approach. Like, there's no beef between him and Buffett on that.
No, there's definitely none. And a little bit of talk your book here, although I don't have the book here, but for research advice for me, I do recommend that people go and take a look at VTI. That's the passive fund I look at, which is a Vanguard total stock market index in the US. There was a Wall Street Journal article that came out recently that's called The Mutual Fund That Ate Wall Street, based on an index that few people know about, which is about VTI and the mutual fund that's similar to that, and also CRISP, which we've discussed before, the Center for Research and Security Prices. Yeah. So for the nerds out there that want to get a little bit of nerddom, but also think about passive indexing, go read that recent Wall Street Journal article.
Oh, that's fun. I saw that headline and I didn't make it through the article, so I'm glad you're bringing it up.
What's next in your fishbowl?
All right. It's my second terrible quiz. This is according to Vegas Insider, and I can't think of a better authority for this.
Vegas is another thing I do know about, so apologies.
Perfect. This is a double-blind, peer-reviewed study. I'm joking because I'm sure that's just a Survey Monkey survey. This is about the booziest college football fans in America by university. So I have a list of 25 names here. This is a top 25 fan bases in terms of drinking in the stadium, right? So the out of the stadium stuff, that's a whole nother survey. That's for a later time, Doogles. But you want to make any guesses at your top universities here?
So I'm guessing the universities that have the most booze that's sold within their stadium. Is that?
Yeah, basically it's average drinks consumed per game by fan base.
Okay.
Then we're going to talk about the economics of that too shortly.
Ohio State?
Didn't even make the list. Great guess. Would have been on one of my...
Perfect.
No, didn't even make
I'm going to go down south. I'm going to go to University of Alabama.
So Alabama, number 9, 3.6 drinks per attendee.
Whoa.
For average...
That seems aggressive.
Cost... Just wait. That's only number 9. For an average cost of basically $25. Your Alabama fan rolls into the stadium, spends $25 on beers, and gets 3.5. It's a pretty good value for your money there.
I have 2 more guesses. ASU?
Okay. Ooh, great guess. I also would have had ASU on my list. They're not here.
And USC.
All right, USC number 6. Good work.
Ooh, moving on
also,
up.
Though, yeah, they say 3.6, so, it's similar to Alabama.
Okay.
I'm so glad you mentioned USC because that is the highest cost per beverage on this chart. To get 3.6 drinks in LA, you have to spend almost $33.
Ooh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
What's number 1?
All right.
Give me top 3.
Top 3 are all Big Ten country. And number 1, I think they're trying to drink away their team's performance recently. Number 1 by a whole half a beer. So, basically the whole list from number 2 to number 21 is all within 1 beer of each other. It's between 3 and 4 beers per game. Number 1, Nebraska, 4.5 beers per game.
Wow.
Half beer greater than anyone else.
It explains a lot.
Number 2 is Minnesota, 4 beers a game. I mean, it's cold up there, so I think they're just trying to stay warm. And number 3 is Wisconsin. So the Big Ten really dominating this. Wisconsin, you get almost 4 beers for $23. That's a deal. They're having happy hour at the stadium. I guess.
I'm going to see you flying up there now to buy your beer. This is going to be with your value investing beer methodology.
Yeah, it's worth it. It'll pay for my flight. LSU representing the SEC comes in at number 4. LSU also has expensive beers. Let's see. Should we go conference by conference here? Looks like top representation of the Big 12 is Kansas. Now this is hilarious because no one goes to Kansas basketball game or Kansas football games. But apparently, if you go, again, the product's so bad that you have to put a few back. ACC highest representation is North Carolina State, 3.6 beers. They're number 8. And then Pac-12 USC is number 6. So really fun times. Some of the other names on the list, middle of the road. Penn State makes an appearance. Duke makes an appearance. Also a poor football team there generally. California, Kansas State, Arizona, Oregon. Pretty good stuff. I find this stuff fascinating.
Should have thought of Penn State. I didn't think about that. But yeah, I know you do.
And moving on.
What else you got in the fishbowl?
Can we just touch on Craig Wright? I feel like it's important for the listeners to know. We mentioned this a while back that there was a trial going on in Florida where what's the best way to describe this? A business associate of Craig Wright's family, this individual had passed away, had claimed that they created Bitcoin together. And so the founders of Bitcoin have 1 million Bitcoin set aside, which is the equivalent value of something like, at the time we talked, it was $60 billion. I think with the pullback, it's more like 50 or $48 billion now. But the trial promised to actually give a U.S. court's opinion of the true founder of Bitcoin. And it came back and said this individual named Craig Wright is Satoshi. Like, incredibly fascinating
hold
stuff.
on. I think you're
okay.
I think you might be overreading there. My read of this was what they said. They did not say who the founder of Bitcoin was. What they said was that I can't remember the claimed business associate's name, but they were saying that person did not found Bitcoin with Craig Wright. I think is what they came back and said, with no claim as to whether or not Craig Wright did it.
Okay. I think that's if you put on your lawyer hat, that's probably fair.
Because Craig Wright ended up having to pay, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he ended up having to pay the family, but it was because of other business dealings. And so the court kind of came back and said, we don't see evidence that they created Bitcoin together. We do see evidence that they work together on this other stuff. And so he ended up having to pay what is like a pittance compared to half of 48 or 50 or 60 billion.
So he paid $100 million.
Yeah. And he
called
it a win.
Than 30 billion or what. But to the point, yeah, okay. That's a very fair nuance. I will tell you, places like CoinGeek.com have headlines like Bitcoin creator Craig Wright 100% Satoshi, says the juror in the Kleiman Wright case. So
yeah.
I mean, I appreciate your nuance there because there's some misleading headlines out there.
I do go and get my hard-hitting journalism from CoinGeek.com.
Well, hey, in the crypto space, it gets pretty sketchy pretty quickly out there. Don't have all the major players.
It's good to close that out.
Yeah, I really appreciate the nuance you're providing. I think that's it for me. You got anything else this week?
I have one last thing that is not investment related, but is just a, dip into the fishbowl just for a little piece of news as to who you should not be. And this makes me think about an episode months and months ago that you brought up the don't be a jerk philosophy that the Yankee Candle, I think.
Yeah.
So what do you do when it's the CEO that's the jerk is the question basically here. So there's a company called better.com. It's a lending company, mortgage lending company. And the CEO, go and find this video online and watch it if you have not. The CEO laid off 15% of the staff, about 900 people, did so over Zoom. And it's the way in which he does it was so heartless. He comes on and he says, I've had to do this before. And the last time I did this, I cried. I'm going to be stronger this time. It's like, what robot are you? And how? And then the way that he actually made it happen was he was like, we're going to have to let go of 15% of our workforce for financial reasons and for performance reasons. And if you on this, that's you. Like, that's basically what that last part was not verbatim. That was just me. But it's like, so like, Google it, watch the video. And then the two goals you should have in your life are: 1, keep your daughter off the stripper pole, and 2, don't be the CEO.
You have me laughing over here. Yeah, I have not seen the video, but some of those quotes were widely written about. And the whole, like, it's about me. Like, I've had to do this before, and I cried last time. It's not about you, dude. And you're
No,
unfortunately impacting everyone else. You're the one that's still the CEO of the company that still has the job. It's not the time to think about you. And the Zoom thing totally sucks. I know we're in a world where that unfortunately is forced upon us, but that's also not ideal. I've never heard of like that's the equivalent of like calling people into a big conference room and being like, "Hey, if you're one of the 500 that managed to get a seat here in this game of musical chairs, you lost your job today. Congratulations."
exactly. I mean,
It's
it's
just weird.
people's lives. Like, you just
Yeah.
can't be flippant with it. So don't be that person.
All right, well, there's lots of media content out there from us. Hit us on Twitter at Skippy Doogles, Skippy and Doogles at Substack.com. Reviews on iTunes really help more people find the show. We always appreciate those. Listener mail is skippydoogles at gmail.com. Excuse me. And we might have exciting news for you guys coming up shortly with more ways to connect to the
Loving
show.
it. Thanks for listening.